The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. Can't do no more of that. I'm sorry. I just can't, man. I just can't. They're one of my chief rivals. It's a pretty catchy song. But this video class is about, is Tennessee finally back? They just might be. Let's talk about it. Well, here we go again, boys and girls. Another episode of the OCF, that's the Outlaw of College Football. That's me, JPC, also known as Jesse Paul Clark, on Facebook, spelled Jesse without the I. And I'm also on Twitter at OCF Productions. Now, getting right to it, Tennessee football. They say it every year. Just about every other year, Tennessee football is supposedly back. But this year, they may finally be back. As a matter of fact, their fans are not even making a big fuss about it. They beat Florida, but you don't see them out there calling attention to themselves like they have in the past. That's a good thing. That's a good thing that Tennessee has learned the art of sneaking up on people. Maybe playing a little bit of possum as to not call attention to themselves at being at 4-0. I think that all this came back, the talk from me and others now that Tennessee may be back, it's come from the progression throughout the season with Tennessee. It all started for me with the Pittsburgh game. They were down by 2 scores, and I was like, here we go again. Tennessee's going to lose a game that is basically a toss-up, a game that they need in order to try to get back to contending for at least a division title in the SEC East. Although it was a non-conference game, it was one of those confidence-building games for Tennessee. They came back. They went to overtime. They won the football game. And I think from there forward, Tennessee's confidence has surged. And it showed in the Florida game, and they were able to pull that one out as well, 38-33. Florida's always been somewhat of a big nemesis for Tennessee throughout history, since we went to 12 teams at least. And now Tennessee even has their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, being mentioned in Heisman talks. I saw a few articles today mentioning Hooker as a possible Heisman candidate, so I looked up his stats. He's got 1,193 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, which is as good as you can get in 4 games. 78.6% completion rate. That's pretty damn good. 90.3 QBR rating. That's tied for 3rd nationally. So, if Tennessee continues to win, Hendon Hooker may actually become a Heisman threat for the University of Tennessee. Now, the reason why I think Tennessee could be back is because of the way their schedule sets up for them perfectly. The key game, of course, as always for Tennessee, is Alabama. Alabama has beaten Tennessee 15 years in a row, which is a record for this series. It's always been a streaky series, but not this way. This went beyond streaky to being dominant from one side. As a matter of fact, a lot of kids in college don't remember Tennessee ever being in the same class as Alabama because they weren't old enough to understand football enough to watch a football game. But Tennessee is off this week. And I think it's a great thing that they scheduled this week off. I know it's just a slight bit early, but they got the week off. Just had a big win over Florida. And then they play LSU on the road. LSU, not as good as they used to be. Tennessee could easily win this game. LSU is not as impressive as A lot of people thought they would be under Brian Kelly, in my opinion. They can win that game. They can beat LSU. And then they play Alabama. But Alabama has to run the gauntlet of Arkansas and Texas A&M before they play Tennessee without an off week. Alabama's off week may be a tad too down the road, to be honest. But Alabama's always had that off week between Tennessee and LSU because Alabama and LSU's had some epic battles. And we always see that as a time to recoup and repair ourselves and get healed up and ready to play LSU for that November run. But this year, because LSU's not that great, it might have been better for Alabama to have a week off before Tennessee. But you never can tell how these things are going to pan out. So you really can't blame the scheduling on that. But it sets up nicely for Tennessee. If Alabama gets past Arkansas on the road, which is that's a pretty big, scary game for Alabama, I'll be honest with you. Arkansas coming off a real close, emotional loss to Texas A&M. Maybe fired up and ready. Sort of reminds me of the Texas A&M Alabama game last year where Texas A&M lost to Mississippi State and then turned around and beat Alabama. But they got something to prove, and they got everything's on the line for Arkansas in that game. But if Alabama gets past Arkansas somehow and then beats Texas A&M in Tuscaloosa, that's two back-to-back pretty emotionally charged games for Alabama. And they still haven't had an off week. Meanwhile, Tennessee has had an off week and had a couple of weeks to prepare for Alabama. So, not saying they're going to skip preparing LSU, but they don't have to prepare but one team. They don't have to prepare for two, like Alabama. Two heavyweights, like Alabama. Alabama's going to be banged up. It's going to be a prime opportunity for Tennessee to finally break that streak, in my opinion. If Alabama's going to lose a game this year, that's where I think it may happen. In Knoxville, after playing two hard playing two hard games, one in Arkansas and one in Tuscaloosa. Now, if Tennessee were to take advantage of Alabama not being as healthy and win that game, upset Alabama and break their 15-year streak, they have smartly, once again with their scheduling, the scheduling gods have smiled upon Tennessee. First, they have that off week, like I said, and Alabama has no off weeks going into Tennessee. And now, if they were to upset Alabama, they have to play UT Martin right after that. That is really smart because they're not getting an off week, but you might as well say it's an off week. They beat Alabama. They can rest up their players for during the UT Martin game. And then they have that two-game stretch against Kentucky, who's now ranked in the top 10. Whether they will still be at that time, I don't know, because you know Kentucky. They'll end up pulling the Kentucky and losing to somebody they're not supposed to. But they got the two-game stretch. And UT Martin gives them a little breather before that. Sets up nicely. If they get past Alabama, Tennessee has a pretty good opportunity to maybe spring an upset on Georgia. Kentucky, while they are ranked in the top 10, they just don't feel like a top 10 team to me. I think Tennessee can beat Kentucky. And then if they pull the upset on Georgia, now we're talking. Now we're talking about possibly a dark horse run at a national championship. At least a run at the SEC title and maybe a spot in the playoffs. Who would have thunk it? Josh Heupel, I didn't really think much of Josh Heupel when he first came here. I thought it was just a sort of a lazy hire by the AD at Tennessee because he came in from Central Florida and he didn't really search around. He just went back to his old employer and stole their coach. And Josh Heupel, I just thought it was a lazy hire. But it's turned out that it's been a pretty damn good hire. So, people might need to beware. Tennessee might really be back. And that's all I got to say about that. Little heart option underneath here. It's the thanks button. Heart thanks button. Click on that. Throw a few dollars in the coffers if you don't mind. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this video. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now dismissed.